All right, Judith Corvin-Blackburn, welcome to Gray America. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you guys doing?
Uh, okay, cold. You know, it's a
Yes,
little
cold up there, huh?
it's a little cold up here. Lots of snow last night, so I'm gonna go out and shovel the road after this.
Yeah. Yeah, right now I'm in North Carolina. It's 50 degrees, so
Oh wow, that's good.
yeah.
That's not too bad. That's
Oh
not.
yeah, that's right. You're in quite an interesting area there, aren't you?
Yeah, near Cherokee and not far from Asheville.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Very spiritual, that area.
You didn't get messed up by that big storm?
We were really lucky. We were just, I think, about 15 miles west. We lost our phone and internet. It came back eventually. So we were very lucky.
So this let's get I guess we should probably get back, bring some context into this at all. You've been helping people you know, psychologically, spiritually for many, many years, many decades, actually. So, what first drew you to blending this transpersonal psychotherapy with shamanic practices? I think that's probably a good part to start, a good place to start before we get into your latest book, the 6D book.
Yeah. Well, the shamanic practices organically grew out of the transpersonal.
Okay.
Um, so that's just understanding the interconnectedness of how we're all interconnected. Um, the transpersonal, of course, I have a relatively traditional education. It was in the 70s, so nothing was very traditional back then. But uh, I suddenly started, partly because I was doing yoga and reading a book called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda. And my whole consciousness started opening up. And as it did that, I really wanted to bring it into my practice in terms of helping people. And what it ultimately evolved, just to synthesize it, it's really about understanding, we come in with this soul essence. We come in with purpose, sometimes many different types of purpose. And then we get conditioned by a very dysfunctional society. And so much of the healing is getting rid of the conditioning, really, so that the person can fully step through.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Have you noticed that change at all in the last decade with computers and social media and the internet and all that? And how has that kind of affected your practice and
You
your
know,
outlook in
that
this time?
hasn't affected a lot, other than COVID, which was kind of a gift to me, got me on doing Zoom, which opened up my work to the world in a way that it hadn't before. Um, while, yes, the internet can um, exaggerate the programming, the people that come to me kind of know what I'm going to do. And they're typically not beginners. They're typically already along in their healing process. They're generally open spiritually. But what I've seen it's really been 50 years since I've been doing this, is 30 years ago, people would walk into my office and they wouldn't be on medication. And then they wouldn't need to go on medication because we could do the work. That became very rare. Now, I will say, probably in the last 5 years, people that come to me are on less or none medication. But there was a period where I had to help people, who needed to or wanted to get off
Yeah.
medication,
Yeah.
because not all of it's unnecessary, but in terms to help people functioning. But much of it is unneeded if you do the work.
Wow. So what do you attribute the change in the last few years with less people
Oh, that's an interesting question, Graham, because it may be simply that the people that come to me have already figured it out. So, it's not like I can do a big study and say it's this way or that way. So I don't know that there are less people on medication. There may well be more people, but they're not who I see typically.
Right, right. I mean, maybe the internet opened you up to people that need you that are already kind of like predisposed to see you anyways, whereas before, you were seeing people that needed help either way. So yeah, you would have to kind of coach them off of some things during the process.
Well, because mostly they didn't need it. And when people come to me, again, typically they're not in what I would call need. They're in want. Okay. They're wanting to get more free. They're wanting to move through old patterns that are still impacting them to some degree. They're wanting to move into more of their own evolution. So, I have a unique group of people essentially.
Can you describe a little bit about what a standard kind of like, or what a sort of normal, um, meeting or process would look like how you would help somebody through all that?
Okay, well, I start out obviously figuring out what people are looking for. What is it that drew them to me? A lot of times these days it's my books, which I've written 4 books, but the last 3 books are really very spiritual. The first one was more of a self-help book from a spiritual perspective, but that was a self-published and not widely circulated. So people already kind of know who I am and what they can expect. And then what I really do is help people clear their emotional field. We have physical body, we have an emotional body, we have a mental body and a spiritual body. My typical client will already have the insight, which is the mental body, and also typically be pretty spiritually open. So most of the work has to do with releasing old emotional, that's the word. It's sort of we get clogged up emotionally so that we can shine through.
Blockages, kind of emotional blockages, or
That's great. That's a great word for it. Yes. And I use astrology sometime. I use a lot of intuition and guidance. One of the ways I work is that I'm very, I'm kinesthetic and I'm clair, I've lost the word, but basically I can feel people's feelings. Clairsentient was the word I was looking for. So that I can't tell you, if you're in a session with me, I can tell you if you have anger coming up or sadness or fear. I can't tell you why. You have to tell me that. But we can work with it. And when I feel it release, I know you're on it. So that's another experience people have.
yeah.
Is that the one where the other one, is that where they try and pull your fingers apart?
I don't even know about that one.
Isn't that kinesiology where they?
Oh, yes. Well, that's something more like a chiropractor would do. What you're talking about doing this, and no, that's not what I mean. This is clairsentient, which means I feel it in my body. The kinesthetic piece is that I feel it in my body. And so some people are clairaudient. They get auditory messages, which I do sometimes. And some are clairvoyant, where you get visual messages.
Yeah.
So this way you just get a feeling? Is it just like a good feeling or a bad feeling, or how does that sort of manifest?
I can usually tell what the feeling is, because I know if I feel a certain level of tension, for instance, in my shoulders, that's typically anger. And of course, this is a dialogue, it's an exchange. So that each session is going to be very unique. The other thing I do is I do a lot of guided visualization. So I help people go in and really connect with their own inner wisdom and what I would call their own inner healer. So it's not just talk, we talk, but it's really more tuning in.
Can you give us an example of that? I mean, it's one of your sort of guided meditations or your tools for activation, that kind of thing.
Well, they're in my individual sessions. They are very
Personal.
individualized, right? I have a YouTube channel where I do, and my books all have guided meditations. But the one that I always start with if I'm doing a presentation is helping people tune in to their heart. Because what really transforms us is opening that heart up. Our heart's closed because we go through different levels of trauma, and it's a protective mechanism. And as we find new ways to protect ourselves that don't mean having to close our heart, life changes. Let's put it that way. Relationship changes. We feel different.
Yeah, it reminded me of when Darren mentioned that kinesiology. I have this picture of a place where I used to live. And when we talked about back in that episode, when we talked about everything being love and focusing on the heart, when you mentioned that, I was like brought back to that place that I used to live in. It reminded me of the episode that Darren actually mentioned about the kinesiology, which is interesting. So what role does the Ka body or like the soul's energetic blueprint play in this?
Well, my work is, whether it's through teaching, writing, or through the therapy I offer, is to help people. The Ka body is really our soul's blueprint. It is other dimensional. From the theory I use, it resides in the sixth dimension, which physicists consider the quantum field. And it's just energy. It's very high vibrational physical, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Right? It's not physical like my computer desk arm kind of thing. But it is our idealized blueprint. And I believe we're designed to be able to really merge with that blueprint as a way to live. And that in very ancient times, way before what we call history, people were living in, this is a 5D, 6D frequency. And since then, probably the last 10, 12,000 years, much of our DNA got shut down. So we've been disconnected. So as we open more, we can reconnect with the Ka, which comes from the very ancient Egyptians before the pharaohs. And that idea, I think it probably came from Atlantis and from star civilizations. But, and then we're operating at full tilt, right? We're at our full potential.
Now I have so many questions. Go ahead.
What caused the DNA to shut down?
Yeah.
Well, that's an important question. I don't know we have a definitive answer. I don't know if you're familiar with Barbara Hand Clow's work.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, and her work has been really foundational for me. And she wrote a book. I've read many of her books, but I haven't read this book, but I know the theory, which is, I think she called it catastrophobia, that 10, 12,000, 13,000 years maybe, there was a cataclysmic trauma geologically on the planet. And if you know at all about what we believe to be the history of Atlantis, that was when Atlantis really went down, and people were thrown into chaos. And, it's hard to say. I think that many indigenous tribes really came from Lemuria and Atlantis, and were able to figure out how to live very simply, but also keep some of the higher consciousness. And then you had societies like Egypt was one of the societies that really, and the legend is that Thoth came from Atlantis to teach the Egyptians. So they were carrying out a lot of the information that the Atlanteans had. But they also devolved. I saw that. I was in Egypt in 2005. And one, it's an amazing place. And we were very lucky in the sense that the people, the tour that we were on, it was a shamanic journey, had a lot of connections in Egypt. And so we were able to get into the temples early in the morning before other tourists and do meditative kinds of things in there. But what I noticed, even with the hieroglyphs, is that as the society devolved, the hieroglyphs got more complex. And the reason I believe that to be true is that when you're at a certain level of development, when those DNA strands are open, you can communicate telepathically. It was just normal. As those closed down, people needed more complexity to try to figure out. We became more left-brained.
That kind of makes sense to me because so many cultures all over the world seem to signal or try and warn about floods or cataclysms. Like it seems like it was really an inherent part of our growing up. You know, over the last since you mentioned that over the last yeah so many thousands of years. Yeah, we were in or Darren at least took a group of people around the Azores. Looking for Atlantis in a way, like Azores being the place for Atlantis with Randall Carlson. So we always talk about this cataclysm type thing, and there's also the different cycles of cataclysm that seem to be here that and, you know, and we might be going through one now too, which is interesting because, maybe that's some of the reason why stuff is getting the way it is and it seems to be accelerating so much. Maybe people's, genetic memory or ancient sort of ancestral trauma is coming out again.
I do think that's a piece of it. You know, it's there's so many levels to our psyche, and simultaneously we're in a time of enormous change. You know, my perception is that the craziness, the suffering that's going on is the old paradigm refusing to die easily. And simultaneously, you know, if you experience people other than on the news, or you're not in conventional news per se, um, people are waking up all over the globe. I love it. I have students from all over, and it's very exciting to see people really reclaiming who they are and not getting um, thrown off by the what we see on the planet right now, and certainly in the U.S. So we'll see. This is a really interesting time. It can be a really exciting time, but it's a time of great change.
I just read an interesting post yesterday that also talks about the opposite of that happening, where spiritual people are sort of disappearing, like disengaging almost.
Mhm.
As they wake up, they go through a process, the hermit process, where they kind of like go into this kind of almost like a shell because it's hard to, you know, be around everything that's a lie and all the people that are just kind of going along with this and that. So, have you seen that increase at all lately as well?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think one of the things we're being asked to do, which is not easy, is to be able to hold it, you know, as you move into your higher dimensional frequencies, as more DNA opens, to understand to hold everything in compassion, including what we disagree with, and um, and to to understand this is also an inside job. We carry a lot of the dysfunction sort of archetypically inside of us, so that um, working on those parts of us, because we're holographic, which is a whole other conversation, affects everything. And whether there's going to be a dimensional split, I don't know, where some people will choose to just keep going in that old suffering separation consciousness. Um, but I feel like we're really at the early stages of this great transformation. And if we manage not to destroy the planet, I do believe we'll get, in time, I do believe we'll get there.
What does a split look like?
Well, it is, as you move into your own higher frequency and you're vibrating more quickly, you become more filled with light. And I don't know, if you could stand back and see both frequencies, sort of watching it as a movie, which when you ask that question, what does it look like? I think that you would see almost like veils lifting. And some folks are operating in a much denser way where they are still in, for lack of a better way to say it right now, an old paradigm view of the world. And other people don't have much connection with that. They're creating a new world. So,
Seems like that's already happened on some level.
well, that's interesting, Dan. Like, give me an example so that I have a sense of what you're seeing, so I can respond to it.
Well, I mean, it
Be
seems,
careful.
yeah, seems like we've been living in multiple dimensions for a little while, and then you could even add to that probably the third dimension of the people that have just sort of checked out or are engaging with it from a like entertainment level only at this point. So you've got, I mean, some people that are still all in. I mean, whatever the current paradigm, current government, current ruling structure says, which in some ways almost seems like a backpedal from where we were 25 years ago. And then you've got other people, the category I'd put at least Graham and myself in, where we've just sort of checked out of society. You know, we're not entertaining the job market anymore. We're just fucking not interested. And then you got other people ahead of us that are not interested and not even talking about it anymore. You know, you'd never even know they're not interested.
That's great. Yes, 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 yes. Certainly, that's what I see as well. But there are many people that are. There's been a lot of opening in the last few years, so that a lot more people are open to this view, and they're very. You guys do this, I'm sure, because you want to get some word out. You want people to open and think, and so it's interesting to not even talk about it. That sounds interesting, for lack of a better one. They're really interesting. However, it also, so many need to hear, one, that they're not alone, two, that there is this whole global movement and they don't need to get stuck in, essentially the 3D movie.
What about 4D and 5D? Are we just skipping those, or are those existing somewhere else? Like what are even the what are sort of what is the separation between, I guess, where we are now, which is 3D, 4 if you consider time, and then 5D and then into 6D. People are always saying Trump's playing 5D chess. I don't even know really what that means. I've only played 3D chess.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's playing. I'd have to ponder that for a minute, but people can be manipulated in many ways, and I think a lot of the 5D words have been being used as part of the manipulation. But your question's really important. I believe that we have been, with that DNA shutdown, operating in 3D and 4D. 3D is very physical, as we know. 4D is more of a mental dimension where all the archetypes hang out, so to speak, but it's also where our emotional patterns hang out. So if we haven't worked through our emotional traumas, what happens is that dimension gets clouded and it blocks the higher dimensional frequencies coming in. And so clearing you're asking what I did, Graham. Well, helping people clear that 4D gunk so that the higher dimensions can come in. And I believe what we're doing is moving into being 5D, 6D humans. And again, I believe we're designed. So they're kind of parallel dimensions. In 5D, the primary characteristics are unconditional love of self and others. So that's compassion. unity consciousness, to understand everything is interconnected. We're all connected to each other and to everything. So what harms somebody else really harms me too, even if think I'm protecting myself on some level. And when we understand that, we're going to stop that behavior. And then unbridled creativity. So we have all sorts of inspiration at our fingertips to create new and expand. 60 is really where we create from, where we get things to manifest in the physical, how it manifests in 3D, but it's also how it manifests in 5D. And that's kind of a deep topic to explain, but that's what I talk about in my the 60 Ascension journey, that we're creators. And we've always been creating our reality. It's just for the last 10, 12, 13,000 years, we've been creating it unconsciously. And when we allow that awareness to come through and allow ourselves to take responsibility, not in a self-deprecating way or a judgmental way, but simply in an observing way. Okay, so I've created this in my life. How does it serve me? How can I transform it? That kind of thing. And as we understand that more and learn to work with those energies, then it's going to be a lot easier to create a very loving, peaceful world where everyone can thrive. All beings, not just humans.
And part of that process would be reactivating our dormant or blocked DNA.
That's what I believe, Graham. I think that the DNA is opening anyway for many people that many may not even know it, and which might create fear, which may make them want to, if we just look at what's going on with the authoritarianism that's popping up from the United States to other places in the world, I believe it's because people are so imagining magically somebody else can come in and take care of business, and that they'll be the ones that are okay. It doesn't matter if people that they perceive as different from them aren't okay. Yeah. It's a real kind of survival piece. And of course, it's not going to work. It's, it can cause a lot of damage and a lot of suffering, but it's not going to get anybody anywhere. As we go into the higher frequencies and we're willing to take responsibility, then we can create a very different place. But understanding we're part of that creative process. It's not going to come from outside.
How did you incorporate your I love the term geometric vision. Like the sacred geometry is included in this process, which is fascinating for us because we've had Randall Carlson on a lot. We've talked about sacred geometry a lot, where I used to think it was kind of like hooey. And then when I really dug into it, I'm like, holy, it's all connected. There's all these sacred numbers that are repeating over and over again. And it combine, it corresponds to time and time being sacred and all these things. And I remember we had a guest on years ago that was talking about the dodecahedron, and the dodecahedron is one of my favorite shapes, and how powerful the visualization of a dodecahedron is. Just even like in affecting plants and stuff in your home. So maybe you can expand on that part of the process.
Yes, and I am not an expert on sacred geometry. When I felt that when this book started coming through, I had to really learn a lot. And the dodecahedron is, of course, the most sacred of the Platonic solids, and was by the ancient mystery schools banned from the populace. It was considered only the priests and priestesses, essentially, were evolved enough to manage the energy because it's so powerful.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's really neat that you're working with it, Graham. It's just, what we would really consider magical. It's how everything is so interconnected in these patterns. And as you say, these number sequences. And how there's a great show on Gaia. I can't remember the name anymore, but one of the things I really got from that is this is how we communicate with the cosmos, because it's not just our little dimensional ascent. It is in the universe and multiverse. It's that universal language. And it just comes through frequency. That's why you can understand what I'm saying when I'm talking about the hieroglyphs getting more complex.
Yeah.
Because we lost our ability to just work with frequency.
Yeah, things were simpler. And because like you said about the indigenous cultures, they kept it simple, right? So it's kind of like that. They have the spiritual awareness and the intuitiveness and all that, but they also kept it all simple. Whereas things got sort of the technology that came from Atlantis, it seemed to, get degrade after time. I mean, I often wonder what happened there. If there was another collapse after that, that started the devolution of the West, or Egypt and the West,
Yeah, I mean, these are mysteries we're just beginning to uncover.
Yeah.
I think that people are getting flashes, and the stories are probably not all going to be consistent, but they'll be enough to begin to lead us forward. The good news is we know, basically everything we've been told about ancient history is not accurate.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Can technology and this sort of thing, can they coexist? I mean, it seems like,
Can it help us?
The more tech we get, the more sort of totalitarian and authoritarian the world seems to trickle.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Darren. And if you had asked me a month ago, I would have said, yeah, we can create this technology based on frequency that it's different than the technology. We're really technological babies compared to where Atlantis was. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the African shaman, Credo Mutwa, who talked about, he's from the Bush tribe and another famous tribe, and I can't remember the name of it. But he talked about his ancestors 100,000 years ago had technology that makes us look like we're in kindergarten. So, we just don't have those connections to understand this yet. On one hand, I think we can get higher frequency technology, but it also seems to be connected with why Atlantis fell. At least it supposedly fell 3 times, at least the second time. And I've just read a very interesting interview with an ecologist who's saying, we're going to have to let go of certainly using any kind of non-renewable things. And what we consider renewable, you have to use fossil fuels to make them. So where are we going with this? We're clearly overpopulated. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting journey.
So what you mentioned a month ago. So what happened between?
I read the article. I read the article.
Okay.
Just reading the interview, and I've been really thinking about it.
Yeah, it's hard to trust what's renewable and what's not either, because I don't trust the people that are sort of selling their carbon credits and trying to take us down the authoritarian road that way, kind of virtue signaling about the environment. And I'm like, well, those windmills the calculations aren't really showing that they're helping very much. There's a lot of arguments we're not allowed to really have right now about some of this stuff. So
yeah, and it's tricky. I mean, I certainly think solar and wind are better than gas and oil. But again, I think if we view it from the part that we are early on, things are going to divide up. Who's going to be in charge? Are the people, the collective, that say, hey, we've got to honor the earth. We're connected to the earth. She's connected to us. How can we all have a comfortable but not excessive life without doing harm? And no doubt there's a way. I don't have the answer.
Yeah, I think my view on it is we have to go through the next sort of I don't think transition is the right word, but attempt. Like we're gonna have to learn to live with technology and the planet and all that, and it's gonna get pretty nasty for a bit, I think, but then I think we'll come through on the other side, and I think that the people will push back enough eventually that's like, okay, we're gonna have this technology here, but you can't use it to control us, that kind of thing. I really do think we'll come out ahead, but I just think there's gonna be a few attempts at control, and it's gonna be a bit nasty at first, I think.
Well, it may well get nastier. We kept thinking it had hit bottom and then it gets nastier. But I do believe that people that really are empowered are not controlled, that will not allow themselves to be controlled. Technology, we have the ability to not fall into mind control, even energetic control. If you know who you are, you've released a lot of old stuff and can stand in your own sacredness. And also, again, this is not just an individualized journey, even though as individuals we need to do the work. There's a huge collective movement. And when we hold, and this is where 6D comes in, what manifests in the physical is kind of like what images get the most social media hits. So if enough of us are really seeing a world that's just and peaceful and respectful and everything can thrive, we'll get it. However, we're complex and we're still holding those old beliefs. And if they're unconscious, they can be really strong. So part of the process I think that we're in, and what I'll call the ascension journey, is to bring those into consciousness so we can transform them. And so while things might have looked better 25 years ago, there was still all this stuff under the rug.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, at least it's coming up.
Well,
So-
I gotta mention, I mean, I really appreciate what you're saying. And I agree, but there's the annoying freedom, right? There's that annoying freedom that's kinda because I kinda have a bit of a nuanced view that you can have that, but you can also have freedom. Like there's gotta be a bit of a compromise on like if I call you like if I say hurty words to you, like or if let's say if somebody chooses to be offended, like that kind of has to fall out of the equation in a way because like I should have the spiritual um I don't know what to use.
Autonomy.
Kind of, but more of like experience or discernment to be like, okay, like you can call me whatever name you want. Like that's you, that's not me. So being offended is not included in that calculation. Like that's where I would come from.
Mhm.
I have the freedom. I could be offended if I want, but I mean, it shouldn't affect that person's right to call me a name or something. So, I mean, it's rude, but you know, I think there's too much name and there's too much name calling right now. And I agree with the compassion thing. I think that's the most important thing is like this unconditional love, even for our enemies, like Jesus said. I
Right.
mean, I've been trying to practice that, and it seems to have changed my attitude a little bit. Um, but it's that freedom that there's also the thought that like if we were free and and free from kind of corruption as well. So I don't mean free to corrupt and free as in capitalism is free to like just wreck the world. Like not that kind of freedom. I'm talking about our autonomy and that innovation will happen, stuff will happen that is good for the world as long as there's not this like corporate and governmental corruption. So how do you reconcile that kind of thought process with the whole like, oh, like let's be loving and compassionate to everybody without hurting anybody's feelings?
Well, that doesn't mean not speaking what you see. Just like you said, Graham, it is when you're empowered, it doesn't impact you
Yeah,
because you know that it's not about you. We're all in this together, but it doesn't need to be personal.
yeah, exactly.
Um, and as we get healthier and healthier, we won't take things personally. We'll know how to work through that. Or if we get triggered, we know what to do. Because again,
Right.
we're not going to be perfect. We're going to just do the best. But if we really understand how interconnected we are, then self-servingness goes away, which is what's causing corporate greed and as well as people being totally manipulated against what's good for them, which is fascinating. I do believe that will just recede. Again, whether it'll just exist on a different plane, possibly, but I do think it will recede because more and more people are waking up. And yes, you can use you can try to manipulate people into thinking woke is bad, which is also fascinating. How can it be bad to wake up and see what's going on? And that's could get worse.
Well, woke and awake are different things.
Well, yes and no. Depending on how you want to use it. But in any way, for instance, the United States does not have health care for everybody, universal health care. We're the only developed country that doesn't have universal health care.
Yeah.
People here have been made to believe it's un-American.
Well, we're made to believe something else in Canada. We're made to believe that life might not be worth living. If we have thousands of people dying on waiting lists, so we have our own problems.
Yes, well,
and I don't like your healthcare either, but like it's not all rosy up north above the border, believe me. So
it's just to get out of the mindset of healthcare for profit. I'm not saying there's not bureaucratic craziness everywhere. If we could get localized, which I think is what's going to happen.
Yeah, something's got to change.
Right, where you have resources within a relatively small geographic area. It doesn't mean you don't interconnect with other areas, but it means smaller areas can be more self-sufficient, have healing centers.
I love it. Yeah. I was thinking about that the other day, like, because I had to go to the hospital and it has been so long since I've been. I'm like, oh my God, like this is just a terrible experience. I mean, it was good. The people were good and everything. Like it was an okay experience, to be honest. But I was thinking about the healing centers and the old temples back in the day, like where you should be able to kind of get maybe a massage and some traditional healing, but everything is so allopathic now. Like it's all just so scientific and kind of gross,
To the point of executing people. I mean, that's where we're at now. We're just killing people in Canada because we're not willing to do the same procedures that they can get in the US. So, I mean, we've literally got people that our government has condemned to death and offered to kill through medical assistance in dying that are dealing with totally treatable diseases.
Huh. Well, that's news to me. Okay.
Yeah. Now we're about to expand that to mental health patients and children so that children can get themselves executed without ever telling their parents about it.
I'm speechless. I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, we're at the point now where 5% of deaths are now caused by government medical assistance in dying, which is basically the government shooting you up with some shit and then you die. And then, they've and now we're at the point where physicians are recommending it to people. They're like, well, have you considered, killing yourself? We can't help you. And the waiting list is so long for any of these procedures, or they're not approved by our healthcare system. So you can't get that on. That's experimental, or that's this or that. You just can't get it. But what you can get is you can wait 3 years for an appointment, even though you're in pain every day, or we can just kill you today.
Well, okay. I would rephrase it, Darren. Or we can give you the option to check out today. But I hear your frustration. One of the things I write about is how to use sacred geometry in architecture. So imagine if you walked into a hospital that was based on sacred geometry. We probably wouldn't call it hospital, but what we look for now. So that just walking in itself becomes healing.
That's a great idea.
That healing energy.
Yeah.
Right? That we had schools like that. This is these are the images I believe we all need to hold. I think what you both are experiencing in terms of the Canadian healthcare system is all the old ways don't work.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great idea. I've been thinking about that sacred geometry and architecture. Even people just being able to build their homes or buy plans that are based on this type of stuff. And yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can do a little of it without, going full tilt. Everybody can do a little in their homes, even in very urban areas. You can, I talk a bit about that as well.
I guess that is the one sort of advantage that your system has over us is you can do that kind of stuff still inside of it. Like in Canada, that's illegal. That's like any sort of illegal. Any step outside of their system is like not okay. The government is paying all the bills, so it's like we're not allowed to deviate from our.
And have the government pay for it.
Yeah, whereas so we're not allowed. Like a physician can't do certain things. Like we couldn't do like. This sort of localized system that you're talking about, that would be great. They've sort of insulated themselves against that here so that a doctor will lose his license we had during COVID an epidemic of doctors losing their license for not following the state mandated protocol, which was, one thing.
And we couldn't we didn't have any option of going to let's say for a vitamin drip or go down for they were all shut down, right? There was no, you couldn't go to, you guys had
we're not allowed private stuff in Canada, that sort of thing. I live in Alberta where it's sort of infiltrated a little bit, but we've got this system here where it's like, there's not really an avenue for any of that sort of stuff. Any of that sort of stuff right now is already happening outside of the main healthcare system through weird sort of workarounds. It's not going to be covered by the system. It's not going to be covered from insurance. And there's going to be a hard limit on what they can do. For example, during COVID, it was just as simple as if you did anything but prescribe remdesivir, that you lost your license, period. You couldn't, if you'd started giving your patients any advice outside of, I think it was remdesivir, then forget it. That's not on the table. It's not an option. You lose your license and you lose your ability to practice medicine in Canada.
Okay. So if this is pervasive, where is the mass movement to say, wait a minute?
Well, the media is bought and paid for by the government, so the Canadians don't know. They don't pay attention to what's going on. This is why we're in a bit of a different situation. This is kind of why we appreciate the freedom and the feeling of freedom in America, because we know there's lots of problems down there, but up here it feels totalitarian, right? The West is collapsing, Canada along with it, Canada at the head of it. There's not one metric in the West, in Canada, that's doing good right now. And the people are not, they're Darren and I have resigned ourselves. That's kind of when we talked about checking out and all that kind of stuff. There's so many people that are just going to go along with whatever the system tells them to do, whatever the government and the media tell them to do. That's it. So there's no mechanism for change in Canada at all. We're just going to slowly collapse into another culture and another country.
And we're gearing up to ban social media companies. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen.
I'm okay with it. I'm watching it with fascination. I'm not getting I'm trying not to get resentful. I'm looking at it in a different way. But this is a point of view that you're not going to see on the media. You're not going to see it. Even Americans won't talk about it. It's different, right?
That is different. At the same time, it's not different, because what's going on here is not all that different. Yes, maybe doctors have more ability to talk about herbal treatments, those kinds of things. But the system here is not working either. And when you have medicine for profit, you really start messing things up. And that's happened more and more, probably in the last 25 years.
Yeah,
that's probably the biggest misunderstanding about Canadian healthcare, is assuming that people, I'm not saying you, but people assume it's not for profit. But I can assure you that there are tons of people making billions of dollars every year. Just, I'm just not paying for it. My tax dollars are, but it's just like a no bid system for medical beds, for band-aids. So you start breaking down like what the taxpayers getting charged for a band-aid is like $37.50 to get a band. So there's just this whole, so it's like we're almost stuck in the
That's
same
yeah,
system as you are.
yeah.
But they've managed to figure, and this is sort of the thing you got to watch out for with the universal health care, is they've managed to trick us into thinking that just because we're not paying for it every month, it's just coming out,
Correctly.
it's just coming out of our taxes. They say like I think 45% of every tax dollar I pay goes to my health care.
Well,
Approaching
Derek,
50%.
you wanted to go to the Department of War in the United States. I mean, this.
But that's sort of the trick they play, is because I'm not paying for it, I don't even realize. And I guess it's the same with you guys, but it's the insurance companies. So you do realize it when you go there and you don't have insurance. I don't really have that realization at any point. Now, the realization will be when I want to get some sort of thing that I can't get because it's not approved here, because it's not cost effective to the people who are making the money. But we'll never really have that uproar because you've got, but I mean, you could count on one hand the companies that are supplying all of the medical supplies to the government, and they're not public companies. They're very much private companies like Stryker and Medibed and these other companies. There's like 5 or 6 of them that have now completely overtaken our medical system, and now they can just charge whatever they want.
Well,
So
don't
the
forget
doctors
pharma.
aren't making any money. The nurses aren't making fuck all. But Stryker and these other major companies that have made backroom deals with our medical government system are making billions over billions in a completely no bid system that most
So
Canadians
it really, in
don't even
many
know
ways,
exists.
profit, even though it's publicly. And I see the mystification. I hear what you're saying.
So it almost makes it worse, because then we have to listen to all these people all around the world talk about how we're the fucking pinnacle of healthcare. And it's like, man, I can't get an MRI for 9 months. That might be too long for some people. They might be fucking dead.
Right.
So it's like this, that's a good word for it, mystification. They've sort of mystified the thing into thinking we've got this universal socialist utopia, but it's the exact same thing as yours, except they're like, hey, instead of having these fights, just add 20% more to the taxes and we'll just do it all in the background and they'll just shut the fuck up.
And pharma still pays the government too. Big pharma still pays the government. And that changed, I think, 9 years ago or something, where there was another mechanism for pharma to insert their money into our government healthcare. And the problem is people call it free, right? Oh, the Canada's free healthcare. Well, it's not free, for one thing. So
it's funny. The one thing they don't pay for is pharma. It's like pharma's like, no, because the Canadian government's going to try and whittle pharma down into how much they can charge for certain things. So that's just one of those things that then has to end up outside the system, that now you have to have additional insurance through work or through whatever if you want to have your drugs covered.
Oh yeah, right. I see.
That's honestly where you run into the biggest sort of problem, is because we don't have any sort of drug coverage. I think they try to say they just introduced one, but that was for like type 2 diabetes medication and birth control for people. And that's the only 2 things they made universal. So this is where the real problem comes in, is because now they're so any of these medications, so that's where people get into real trouble, where they get on some medication that'll keep them alive for better or for worse, or how they got there. But people get into these situations. There's a medication that'll keep them alive, but it costs this much a month. And in the States, that'll ruin people. It will ruin people. I'll admit that. Maybe they can make a deal with them in the back room or get it for a little cheaper, or whatever they can do. Whereas in Canada, it's just not an option. It's fucking off the table. It's not available here. It's just a complete. Whereas I'm not saying it should cost 20 grand, but I mean, if the option is come up with 20 grand or be resigned to death, it's like, well, I'd rather take my chances at coming up with this money.
And I think in many ways we have to bypass all of that.
Yeah, this is
where, one thing that happened in the States, I don't know if it's been effective in Canada, but again, it's a different system. But and this happened about 25 years ago, they did a survey and found out most people were interested in alternative medicine and doing herbal kinds of things and chiropractic and acupuncture, etc. And then the medical schools had started introducing herbology. So it expanded that way. But it would be good, essentially, to have, I mean, I do think we're going to see alternative systems becoming more and more popular. And I mean, how totalitarian can government stop it? I suppose. But that's disintegrating too. So I wouldn't worry about that. I would just move toward what we
That's
can.
probably the last hope, is that the government is disintegrating. And that's kind of what I think too. It seems like the idiocracy has got to the government, and Atlas Shrugged is inevitable. And it seems like we'll get another chance I mean, I would say right now it's a coin toss, but we might get a chance to start building a new system without a revolution, because if revolution gets in the way, then I don't think any new system ever gets built. We just sort of go back to, I mean, it'll start with some cool stuff, but it'll eventually degrade to sticks and stones.
So it is, if we're going to raise consciousness fast enough, really.
And the people that go to see you and the sort of type of healing you do, I think that helps, because less people need the hospital. I mean, really, if you're, keeping people off of medication and doing this stuff, and they're healing their inner child and all this kind of stuff, which is, all this trauma-based stuff, I think it's a huge benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially here, because it's like, for us, the hospital is just, for most people, the hospital is not really a viable option. And it's very good if you like get in a car accident, you break your leg, you fall off a ladder, they'll get you there and they'll get you sorted out. But if for anything sort of systemic, it's the exact same as yours. It's just, here's your drugs, take them or shut up.
Okay. So
I think the real difference is we just have one insurance company.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's the government.
Again, I think we have to come in from very new places. We can see what doesn't work. And I do think, there's lots of brilliance around. And these young people that are coming in and coming up in the world are holding a new level of consciousness as well. And so, yes, sure, it's okay to have your anger or whatever you need to at what doesn't work, and then to move forward.
Yeah, and manifest what's going to work. Yeah, manifest the new healing center, the healing temple. Yeah, I like it. So, give us some more hints on how to do that. Buy your book, of course, but
well, what I'm doing is giving people ideas, inspiration, images, and also every chapter at the end of both. Well, actually, in all my books, but especially in Activating Your 5D Frequency and the 6D Ascension Journey, is to help people go in and do some of that healing themselves. And also to visualize a new world. I feel really strongly about this. If we're going to create New Earth, we need to hold those visions and talk about the visions. Yeah, we can gripe and we can say, hey, this is what doesn't work. But if you really want change, it's holding visions. So, yeah, let's create architecture. I'm sure they had in Atlantis. I know many of the advanced star civilizations work with this. And we have the templates in our cellular memory. Imagine schools based on sacred geometry. Imagine, I think we'll get rid of prisons, but if you have to create some sort of detention for people, imagine that based on sacred geometry. We want to heal, inspire, in order to transform people into their best selves.
I like it.
Judith, this has been great. Where can people get the book? Where can they follow their work? Maybe where can they book an appointment? We'll put it all in the show notes, but a lot of people, it's best to mention it here as well.
Okay. Well, my book is available on Amazon and all of the sites. Inner Traditions, the publisher, it's a great publisher. But the best way really is to go to my website, which is called empoweringthespirit.com, and you can find out answers to all those questions.
Excellent. Perfect. Thanks for coming to the show, Judith. We hope you have a wonderful day down there in much warmer than here, North Carolina.
All right, you guys. Yeah. Well, stay as warm as you can. It was great to meet you both.
You too.
Here's to holding those visions.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Bye.
And now is our chat with Judith Corvin-Blackburn, the 6D Ascension Journey. Fun one. What'd you think?
Good. Yeah, it was interesting. I've got a link in the show notes to that. You can go to her YouTube channel from her website there too. So
people check out the YouTube channel, of course, buy the book. Big thanks to Judith for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Even bigger thanks if you're one of the few who choose to support us over at grimerica.ca/support. I think we're at almost 750 episodes now, all without ads and any bull crap, paywalls. And if you like that, head over to grimerica.ca/support, sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation, and we can keep doing it. While you're there, check out adultbrain.ca for the audiobooks, grimericaoutlaw.ca for the controversial content, contact@thecabin.com for trips and events, and grimericacbd.com for gummies and tinctures and all that good stuff. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.